I hope you get some value out of the session. Therese will be in the sort of the background, though. If you've got any questions you require sort of answering throughout the session, please feel free to interact. It's probably best you see the icon to raise your hand, and Therese will hopefully invigilate on that. And also feel free to update in the comments section and after the session if you've got any sort of questions, queries, suggestions for next user forums to sort of add even more value, then please do send them through to us. I think, Therese, you'll have your sort of contact details, or there'll be contact details at the end, at the wrap up. So I think a few people are still joining, so I should just flick into the agenda. So first things first, hopefully people can see my slides, the standard check on calls these days. So let's just see what we're aiming to cover off here. I hope there's some valuable exercises here. There's we're going to cover off our sort of business to consumer portal, which is sort of a driver for collaboration. That's with yourselves and your end consumer clients. So we made some sort of great enhancements on that in the past sort of few months, 6 months. Then we're also going to do an overview of data rooms, which is effectively focusing primarily on our sort of sharing of documents, or documents of a secure and sensitive nature. And then the next area will be really sort of a statement of direction for Sharedoo, where we're very much focusing on out-of-the-box features to support the various business services that your firms offer. So we're going to cover a solution accelerator around debt management, which appears unfortunately quite a key growth area at the moment. And then furthering on from there, we're going to look at the latest financial module enhancements. We've done a lot of work around the finance aspects within Sharedoo, so hopefully that'll you'll see some great advances there. And then absolutely not last at least is Dave Hodson, one of our long-term clients, who's as a senior stakeholder within Liberty Global. So he'll be looking at sort of some of the insights and sort of optimizations they've made to the firm based on the backbone of Sharedoo. So some interesting notes there. I think Dave may be joining a little late, so hopefully we get the timings right. So there we go. And so in terms of the presenters, I'll be handing over to Sam Woods, one of our lead implementation consultants. Then Ben Nicholson, one of my colleagues, director and heads up strategy within Sharedoo. He'll be covering off a couple of sections, and then the aforementioned Dave will be closing out. And then we've got Teresa in the background, hopefully covering any of your questions. I don't know if there are any questions at this point. Right, you've heard the last from me then. Lucky you. Sam.
Okay, over to myself. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. I am going to only show just one slide to start off with, and then I'm going to dive straight into Sharedoo and show you some of the things that we've been doing on the consumer portal. So on the agenda that was there, it said that there was points 2 and 3, which are the consumer portal and the data rooms. I'm going to consolidate the demo into kind of one thing. It includes both of them. So we'll be covering those off at the same time. So I'm just going to share my screen. Please, somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. Okay, so to kick off the demo, I just wanted to give a bit of context to who's who in terms of the B2C portal. So we have a client, an example client. That person's name is Paul Coll. In real life, Paul Coll is the world #1 squash player. I'm a huge squash fan, and I've decided to just use him just to give myself a little bit of entertainment while I've been setting up the demo, basically. And from a Sharedoo side and an administrator matter owner side, I've put myself as that person who will be showing the modeler side of things. So what I've basically, the intention of this slide is to indicate that I'm going to be flicking between two screens, the modeler screen and then the B2C portal itself. So that's all, luckily, from a PowerPoint side of things, and I'm going to flick directly over to Sharedo. So I am user Paul Cole, and I've been given a link to Sharedo to log into the portal. So I'm going to log in as Paul now. And what I see is the B2C portal in all its fine glory. So to give a bit of an overview before I dive into each individual part of the portal itself, the intention of it was to try and give it a bit of an e-commerce feel. So I think the first thing you've probably been drawn to on the page is the carousel at the top of the screen that you can see that's auto scrolling to banners at the moment. That's to kind of give a bit of a familiar feel to people that are regular users of websites. You'll see further down here, we've got a footer and of course a header at the top. So just really giving it that basic structure of what a website might feel like. And within the page then in the middle, we've got the widgets that are all configurable through Sharedo itself. So to start off with, I will speak a little bit about the banner / carousel itself. As you can see, I've not been clicking at the moment on any of this, and it's been auto scrolling. That's a configuration that we've got in the system that can be set to however you want it. But if you wanted to scroll through itself, then it's easy to configure that as well, so that a user can click to scroll through each banner. The intention of these really is to highlight messages that you might really want to get across to your customers. So I've put an example there of COVID-19 and what that might mean for your case, just as a bit of an example of the kind of messages that you can be putting onto these banners here. So what I'll do is flick over to Modeler. Bear with me 1 second, sorry. Just want to get my alt and tab right. There we go. So go into Modeler. If I wanted to, say, for example, create a third banner, what I can do is go into the portal designer, click into Modeler, and you can see I've got 2 banners here, which are the ones already set up. And if I wanted to create a third banner, it's as simple as clicking banner here and adding the text and any kind of images or anything like that as you want to on the background. So all of this is fully configurable. You can see the auto scroll function is on and off there, simple as that. And like I was saying before, you can set things such as different font sizes, different colors, all of that kind of stuff through a rich text editor that we've built into the widget itself here. So really straightforward to use, really easy to use, and it's something that we've been working on for the past couple of months with one of our developers on that. So yeah, it's starting to look really good. What I'm going to do, I'm going to work kind of in a clockwise direction with the widgets on the page here. So the next one I'm going to showcase is the make a payment widget. So this is a bit of a proof of concept at the moment, but it kind of gives an indication of how you can offer a means of payment or a means of a customer paying for a debt or anything like that, or whatever the reason is that a customer needs to make a payment to yourselves. So what we've got here is an outstanding balance, a due date, and then if the user wanted to see any more details of what that payment entails, there's a link here to open that into a PDF. So we've just got a dummy template on that at the moment, but that would all generate from data within Sharedo and actually full on populate that. It's just in a template form at the moment for this demo. If a user only wanted to pay a portion of the outstanding balance, they can select no on the pay full amount, and they can input a number of how much they want to pay. That will update the payment number at the bottom. That payment will then be made instead of the total remaining amount at the top here. By default, we have card as the preferred payment method because that is the most popular. However, if a user wanted to do an offline payment, excuse me, such as a bank transfer, then we've got that option as well. So what happens in this instance is the button to pay disappears because it is an offline payment, and then the account number and sort code details would then just display for the user to then make that payment on their online banking, for example. If the user wanted to make a payment by PayPal, which is roughly around 25% of online payments, then again, we've got that option to then redirect this user to the PayPal screen to make that payment as well. So that's an overview of the payment widget. Frequently asked questions. So this is pretty similar in terms of how it's set up with a rich text editor and being able to edit text in that way, in the same way as the banner up at the top here. The way it works is by default, everything's set in what's called an accordion dropdown. So all the text just sits within these sections here. So if you want to open them and close them, that kind of just works in that way. All of the information here is fully configurable. So these icons here are all editable. So for example, if you didn't want to show where the offices were located, for example, you can change all the information plus the icon at the top. If I flip back to the modeler screen and I go into the FAQ widget, we can see the 4 FAQs that we've got here already set up. But if I go back to the B2C portal, you can only see 3. Now, what that is because we've got a pagination on here. So the 4th is actually on the 2nd page. That again is a configuration within the widget, and the widget configuration is here. So you say how many FAQs should be displayed before pagination starts, and we've got that set as 3. So that's why only 3 show on the page. If I wanted to move these around, we've got a simple drag and drop function that we can do, which is a nice feature we've just recently added. And obviously, again, if I wanted to add any further FAQs, I can just do that by clicking the Add FAQ button here. And like I was mentioning with the icons, if we want to change them, we can simply do that through this icon selector here that we've got built within the modeler system. The next one is the service request widget. So this is a means of being able to allow a client to contact a user of Sharedoo, a matter owner, for example. So the way that it works, and I'm not fully going to go through every single stage in this, I'm just going to show it from a B2C side, is if a user selects, for example, a subtype such as a compliment, and they want to leave some feedback, that will generate a task in Sharedoo, and that task will be given a priority. So for example, if it was a complaint, that would probably be deemed as a higher priority than a compliment. But that's the way that it works in the back end from a Sharedoo side. However, if a user just wants to fill out the details here, and click submit, typically I've got an error on that for some reason. I've never seen that before, but what should happen there, apologies for that, is we just get a success message that says, thank you for your message. We'll be in touch shortly and as soon as possible with that. And like I said, what happens with that is it generates a notification and a task for the Sharedoo user to use that and deal with that request once it's come in. Other customizations that we can do on the B2C portal here are we can change the background. So I will just flip to another screen to do that. So if I go to this widget here, we've got the means of setting a background color or an image. So currently we've just got that as a color. As you can see, we've got this light gray color. We've got a color picker. So if we wanted to change it to any specific color, we can just do that by using this color picker here. or if we wanted to set a nice image on the background instead of just a plain color, we can do that. Now, if you set an image here, then that will override the value. So if you do have a color and an image, it's the image that will be displayed on the background. I won't change the color because that color that I've selected is pretty bad, and it'll probably make it look not very nice if I was to do that. Last thing on the kind of the home page of the portal that I wanted to demonstrate was the footer. So again, the concept of how this is all set up is similar in terms of the FAQ widget and the banner up at the top, in that it's all been built in blocks and rich text editors and bits like that, where this is all kind of flexible in terms of what you want to include in the content of each of these. But if I go to the footer widget here, again, we can see that this is all editable. You can change this to bold, different size text, all of that kind of stuff, really. But block 1 here relates to this here. Block 2, which is the services part here, is all this here within this table. And then down at the bottom, we've got a contact section as well. So just going back to the B2C portal view, we can see that we've got things like Twitter and LinkedIn just as kind of samples of what you can include. But say, for example, if you didn't have a LinkedIn, or if you didn't want to showcase that, again, that can easily be changed. It can easily be removed by using the icon selector like we had on the FAQ widget. And again, we've got options to add further contact details, so it all theoretically kind of works the same, and it's all that consistency that we're trying to bring in this to make these widgets as easy as possible to use and to build out. And then finally, we have a bottom footer information for putting things like company name and VAT numbers and things like that, which just correlates to this at the bottom here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click into a matter. So I've got all my matters that are assigned to Paul's user are here. So I can scroll through them using the pagination at the bottom. But the one that I'm going to use for this demo is a residential sale. So Paul is selling his property. And I click into this, and we've got some more widgets to display in terms of how we've configured this screen. So again, I'll probably just go in a bit of a clockwise direction with these. So I'll start with the matter plan. And the first thing you might notice is the bar chart at the top. So this is just a phase of where the residential sale is up to. So you'll see that the pre-completion is half filled, which indicates that that's the phase in which this residential sale is up to. We're still doing a little bit of kind of tweaking and amending to the UI on this, but one of the most recent things that we've just put in is if it's quite a long case or matter, then we've added these scroll bars here to just tidy that up a little bit and prevent any big long scroll bars that were previously appearing at the bottom. We've got a key date section within the plan widget, which just shows things like completion dates and things like that really highlight when something's going to happen on a matter. Speaking of things that are happening on matters, we have a transaction log in the chronology. So basically anything that is completed on a matter, we've got that configured here so the user can see everything that is happening. That's all categorized by date, and it just gives that user a real clear indication of activity and that things are actually happening, so they can really self-serve on this kind of thing rather than having to keep contacting to ask where are things up to, have you received this document, all of that kind of stuff that can happen. All actions are configurable within this. So for example, if you didn't want to show something within the chronology, we can turn things on and off. That's all configurable. We have a comments section as well. So I've put a couple of example comments, which is a conversation between the matter owner and the B2C user. The intention of this really is just to, again, improve and kind of give the user another means of communicating with the B2C user and vice versa. And the kind of the functionality behind that is when a user completes a comment, it will notify the person within ShareDo that the B2C user has left that comment. Now, the bit that I really wanted to focus on the matter side of the B2C portal, and there's the reason why we put that as a separate agenda point on today's user forum, is the documents side of things, which is the virtual data room functionality. Now, it is a little bit of a work in progress in terms of a full cycle. However, it's still worth showing where we're up to with it currently. So the two widgets that we've got here, we've got a document shared with you widget, and we have a documents we are expecting from you widget here. Now, the intention of this as a real high level is that the user can the B2C user can return completed documents, and the matter owner can share the initial document for the user to complete, and really, improve that whole document sharing functionality rather than it being something that may be just sent on email. This way, it keeps everything tied within the matter and keeps everything tidy in that sense. So what I'm going to do is just give a little bit of a demonstration in terms of how that works. So I've, in true Blue Peter fashion, this is one that I've prepared earlier. I've created a virtual data room, which is the official term of it, but effectively what that is it's a means of storing documents within kind of like a container. So I've created this virtual data room from the ShareDo side. If I go back to my screen from a kind of a ShareDo admin side, I've got this virtual data room here. If I wanted to create a new virtual data room, it's as simple as clicking create and then go into virtual data room on there and just filling out the details. I won't go into that into too much detail now. Just take it that this is the output, this kind of container here that will just be a blank kind of placeholder where a user can upload documents. As a ShareDo user, what I've done is I've uploaded two documents here, a client questionnaire and a leasehold information form, and then they've replicated onto the B2C portal here. So back into Paul's view, if I wanted to preview this client questionnaire, I can simply do that by clicking the preview button. And if I wanted to download this document, again, I can just click download that and it will just start downloading that onto my machine. The intention of this really is to speed up and make it as efficient as possible for users to fill out documents such as this. So a great use case would be using a client questionnaire. Hi, Paul, please can you fill out this client questionnaire that we've just uploaded onto the system? Paul can download this, complete it, and then upload it into this system here. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to the virtual data room, and I'm going to show an example of how you can just upload new documents. So you can either drag and drop a document into here, or you can just use the upload button here. So if I wanted to upload another document to share with Paul, I can do that here. And then if I refresh the screen, I should have a third document. Yes, I do here. It's as simple as that with how the virtual data room functionality works. So if I wanted to then return the completed document, once I've downloaded that document, I can go into this upload file section here, where I can input my completed leasehold information document. Again, in similar fashion, I can just choose files. I'll just use the same document that I used before, just for ease. I upload that, and then we can see, just using this number one icon here, that document has been uploaded. Sorry, that's this one here. The UI for this is, like I was saying before, is still a little bit in progress. and what we're trying to do is give it a little bit more consistency in terms of how the virtual data room functionality works here. So what we will be doing is, rather than just having a number 1 here and having the document appear in this place, it will appear like this, and it will show the document here. And again, a user can drag and drop these documents here. So that's one of the big UI enhancements that we're currently working on at the moment. But that will then give kind of that full cycle that a completed document can be returned to a Sharedoo user. Now, I think that's kind of it, really. I don't think I've missed anything off. I'm probably just about on time around with what I've been allocated. So, Teresa, are you happy to do questions, or do you want to just move on and we'll do questions at the end?
I think we've had a couple of questions being asked in the background by Linda, but definitely I open up the floor if anybody's got anything they want to ask there around the B2C portal or the document data rooms. If not, we'll push on to Ben. Okay, over to you then, Ben. Oh.
Helps if I unmute my microphone. Yeah, cool. I was just going to add one more thing. I mean, I thought it was really good, Sam. Thanks. Broadly, there are 2 types of widgets now in Sharedoo. Let me share my screen. So for B2C portals in particular, we're expecting everyone to change things. Yeah. So if I go into the modeler, and apologies for this being a little bit techie, by the way. Yeah. So although Sam was in his portal editor and as a business analyst, essentially, he was on this B2C client portal view, and he was just configuring a demo carousel, and it looks like just a standard Sharedoo widget. You know, it's got the settings and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But since we're expecting people to change this, we're still delivering the usual set of widgets, but actually we're delivering these within the IDE. So we're expecting everyone to change the footer, to change styling, to do all of those sort of things. So you can do that through the designer, as Sam showed you, but all of this stuff is available from GitHub, as I understand it, or you can just ask, you know, Teresa or whoever. But if you want to change the carousel, for example, you want to do something completely different, then it's just a bunch of CSS and HTML and a bit of JavaScript. So we're expecting you to change this stuff because, hey, creating some of these unique portal experiences, it takes time and takes a bit of dev. Hey, you can use it out of the box, but if you want to get and change these seeds or indeed add your own widgets, then you can do that stuff through the IDE. Hey, okay, right. I've got 2 sections, so feel free if you get bored to go and make a cup of tea through either of them. I will maybe start with a couple of PowerPoints. I won't bother sharing. I'll go from here. Hey, right. I'm going to do debt, and then I'm going to look at finance, and there's going to be a little bit of overlap. Hey, so as Nick said right at the start, we've been broadly working on the concepts of solution accelerators for quite a while now, and the idea of this is that we'll produce a set of artifacts to accelerate each practice group implementation. So we've done a lot of work on client matter inception, claimant defendant litigation, debt, quite a lot of work in real estate, and we're starting to do some work in private client as well. So what does each solution pack contain? It contains a bunch of analysis artifacts. Again, we're expecting you to change this. So that usual workshop cycle, there's a bunch of sort of process models. I'll maybe just show you that. So I'm just looking at debt today, but process models for all of the various phases of the matter and how they should be. Yeah, so there's process models. We love our high-level designs, so there's some high-level designs to go with that. And then there's a bunch of work types, workflows, personas, portals, and MI reports that are going to be bundled up in this. Again, we're expecting you to change this. Everyone's unique to a greater or less degree, but it's a starting point for that. So what I'm going to walk you through in terms of debt. I'll just talk about roughly what's in the box. So support for B2C, B2B debt recovery. Initially, we're looking at the UK market. Apologies for those in Australia and Ireland, and indeed Canada. Hey, but yeah, hopefully that should give you an example of all these bits and pieces. Hey, we're covering off enforcements, debt management, debt tranches, payment plans, payments, and receipts. All the sort of core work types you need to manage debt recovery. In terms of workflows, we're broadly working on 2 styles of workflows, and I'll demonstrate this in a second. We call them assisted workflows, so they're checklisty type stuff that you see a lot in ShareDo, and I think most people use those. Hey, so they're very much about guiding fee earners through the journey. But we've also been working on some straight through processing. So for some of our clients who are doing volume debt processing, you don't want people to touch these matters. So we're doing a mixture of both. Certainly straight through processing the early stages of the debt life cycle for initiating searches, doing the sort of pre-action, can you pay us some money type contacts are all straight through processing. In terms of the personas and portals, I guess we're developing the B2C stuff more and more. We still got some work to do, as Sam highlighted, on the payment widget, but ultimately the B2C portal will be the place that you're directing your consumers or potentially your small businesses as well to make payments and integration with the payment gateways we discussed over the chat, Linda. Yeah, and then I guess it's a standard sort of management information. I guess where we're looking to add to the sort of the Power BI pack, if you like, are some reports correlating your contact strategy with ultimately how much you're recovering on the debt. So in debt management, there's lots of different strategies. How do you go in hard on debtors, or do you go in soft? And the contact strategy should correlate with the amount of recovery. Hey. Okay, that's enough slides. Let's go back to ShareDo. Okay, let's go back to my workbench. By the way, everything we're showing you is in demo 1. If you want to go and have a look at it yourself or get more guided, then you can have access to this as clients. Yeah, so this is our sort of gold standard of sort of config across everything. Yeah, I'm going to start in the world of instructions, and I will do a manual instruction, but I just want to highlight something else in terms of the bulk upload functionality. This isn't used by many people, hey, but is an illustration of what you can do. So there's a work type within ShareDo called, I think it's called data tables or Excel uploads or something like that. And a feature that's associated with it. What does that mean? It means, so this is just a standard list view. It's looking at bulk uploads. Someone's configured a nice plus button for me. I'm going to put some details in here. So you configure templates within the system. And what do templates do? They basically just define an Excel structure. What have I got in here? I put it in there. Desktop, test docs. That looks like a good example. Okay. So you can upload an Excel structure. Oh, so I'm getting cursed with the demo. I'll do a Blue Peter. Here's one I prepared earlier as well on this as well. Let's kind of look at this one that was loaded. Okay, so I can upload an Excel structure, and broadly the system will churn through it bit by bit. It will map all the data, so you can map data from, in terms of the rows, the headers that you define in an Excel sheet, and we'll broadly start pumping that into the system. What I'm going to do, though, for point of example, is maybe just do a manual instruction to start with. So I'll go to my Launchpad. Broadly, all of the service portfolios in Demo 1 are starting to get more and more aligned with practice groups. So I'll go to my debt recovery, go to my do a consumer debt, mortgages maybe. We all love doing instruction forms, don't we? Pick a client participant. Pick a defendant. So that's all fairly standard instruction stuff, yeah. What we've extended, and this is all obviously it's just a form builder, so you can configure this how you like. It's just some debt initial details, and that's very broadly mapped to the Excel sheet, so it's quite flat in its data. We'll show how that gets transformed in a minute. So when was this debt due? It's due on the 7th. How much do they owe? 5.5 grand. Is there any bad debt provision? Are there any interest chargeable? I won't put any interest in there, and I'll save that stuff. Okay, so the system's just asking me to confirm that my claimant is indeed my client. So I'll just confirm that. We'll submit that instruction. And we'll convert that to a matter. Okay, so a bunch of different processes are going to fire, and I'll use that as an opportunity to walk you through a configuration of a debt portal and illustrate some of the features. Okay, so maybe what we'll do is we'll duplicate that screen and we'll go to the process view so you can get an idea of what's happening on this matter as it goes through its world. Okay. So a lot of this stuff you guys will be very familiar with, hey, so we'll skip over it. It's done some auto allocations. It's just called an allocation rule. It's called a conflict search and a duplicate search. What does that mean? It's run the two searches here. I tend to use the same people as we all do, so we always end up with those conflicts. And I'm assuming it's done some sort of it's assigned it to Wendy in terms of the auto allocation. Okay, it has instructed a tracing agent. So in debt, a lot of it is around, I want to find this person. So what does that look like? In this case, it's just called an API and has raised a payment request to go out to that specific tracing agent, which ultimately we picked up by a finance process and sent out to the tracing agent itself. Yeah. What else? It's assigned a legal protocol. It's not a hugely used feature in ShareDo, although I think it possibly could be. We have the concept, a configurable concept of protocols. So this applies if you're Scottish law, CPPS, VPPS, although I imagine the voluntary stuff has gone away. In debt management, there's a different protocol between pre-action protocol and outsider protocol. So if you're an individual, you're typically under PAP. If you're a business, you're under non-PAP, and if you are a sole trader, it's a little bit of a grey area. So we'll assign protocols and we can run a bunch of different processes off that stuff. Yeah. The next thing it will start to do is actually I'll skip the checklist as I'll go to set up the debt tranche. So if we go to our debt dashboard, and again, this is just standard portal, nothing magic here. It's just list views and all that sort of good stuff. Yeah. You can see it's taken and essentially created a debt tranche, which in our world is a type of invoice. Yeah. It's taken the flat data we had on instruction in that little form builder and has created a essentially an invoice in which I can start to track the various account codes, and we'll talk about this more in the finance section in a short while. Hey, but the reason we do that is because, hey, in debt management, that debt, what did I put there? 5, 6, 7, 8. it's going to start to attract charges. So we're going to add charges onto that. Yeah, it might attract some costs or some disbursements against it. We're going to add those onto that invoice. It's going to, and this is a really safe feature, it most likely going to attract interest. So that this financial transaction, pardon me, is going to keep going up. So we take that flat data, put it into a proper piece of finance functionality. Okay. Let's go back to our list of processes. It's up the thing. It's created a virtual data room. So virtual data rooms are just another work type. They are no different from many others in many ways, just with a different user interface. So within this system, there is a workflow that is configured to create a virtual data room automatically. Sam demonstrated this. But what does that mean? It means this virtual data room is only available to the client. I could do one for my debtor as well if I wanted to. It's just a workflow, and then I can drag and drop files to share, or there's a variety of other different ways of sharing this stuff. Yeah. Okay, I'm whizzing through. Okay, what else we got there? And finally, it's done some calculation around limitation date or time bar date so that I can manage that process. Yeah, let's go back to our process, which was this investigation checklist, and have a look at this one. So far, no one's touched this matter. Yeah, you can configure it to be entirely human interaction free if you want to. And indeed, it looks like this one has whizzed through to pre-action from investigation anyway. It has. Okay, happy days. But let's go through my investigation checklist. So it may be for some matters you want to go straight through, for some you want some human intervention. And I'm not going to dwell on this because most of us are doing this stuff day in, day out. Hey, so yeah, have I managed my participants? Yeah, they've all been set up automatically. Have I reviewed my debt details? Yeah, I had a look at them a second ago and they were all fine. Did I do a risk scorecard evaluation? I didn't, but I'll just go and do one now very quickly. I did that. Did I draft and issue a client report? I'm not going to do that now. We've all seen document generation. And then I can basically decide where I want to take this. It's actually moved the matter for me through for me automatically anyway. Okay. I'll pause for breath, have a sip of my cup of tea to make sense so far. Cool. Let's go back to our process list. So let me refresh that. Right, you can see a bunch more have come in now because this is a straight through example here. So where are we up to? Around up the three at the top. So in debt, and I think this is quite a common pattern that we're starting to use on other of these accelerators now. We want to do chasing essentially, and that applies to when you've sent something out to a third party and you want to send various chasing. So we've been doing some work to make that a lot more configurable. And broadly, we call those contact strategies and contact slots. What does that mean? So the general pattern here is the first workflow will go, right, how do I want to contact them? And once it's got a contact strategy, it will start to basically churn through emails, SMSs, etc., out to whoever you've decided to contact, and it will keep going around this loop. So the general pattern is send something out, create a document expectation. If the document expectation expires, then send something else out. Yeah, and it will keep going round and round that loop. So what does that mean? And I've got this timer to run, I think, on about 2 minutes. So if you don't respond to something within 2 minutes, then it will start to batter it. But let's have a look. Maybe to look at it from a perspective of chronology. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. We did some duplicate search, etc. So it sent an email out to me to say, you owe me some cash, please pay it. Yeah, it's basically then created a document expectation. So I'm waiting for Ben to come back and pay the cash. You maybe wait for a while. It's then reminded me with an SMS to basically still pay me some cash. Yeah. So following our recent email, you have 5 days to settle. Yeah. So that's an example. And if we were to refresh the screen and assuming 2 minutes has passed, then it will move on to the next process in that in that content strategy. Ultimately, if it hits the end of a content strategy, and this is just a workflow, hey, then it can launch something else. Hey. Okay, so let's revisit where we are. So we've looked broadly at some of the early sort of workflows and some of the more advanced stuff you can do. We're going to spend a couple of minutes on the debt dashboard. And this, I won't spend too long on this because this is segueing into some of the finance functionality I've been working on. Okay? So what have we got here? We've got essentially a subtype of an invoice, which is managing my debt. We've got a financial summary widget, which is starting to build a picture up of total liabilities of my debtor. So we had our 5678. I actually raised that disbursement, and you remember I instructed that to estate agents, which is 50 quid. That all got done automatically. We're just about, haven't quite finished this, but just about finished payment plan functionality. And I know this is, although I'm demonstrating this within the concept of debt, I think a lot of claimant firms are going to use this for their sort of dispute and litigation matters. So the general idea here is fully loaded, who is my defendant, debtor, whatever you want to call them, has, and this is test data, as you can see, has a hell of a lot of outstanding amounts with us. So I'm going to say, actually, I want to pay them off over a fixed number of installments. Maybe select a couple of those. Maybe I want to pay that off over 10 installments, which requires me to pay, nigh on £5,000 a month, and it will start to build a payment plan here. Question on the thing, what actions will take the file off the contact strategy? Yeah, cool. So within the contact strategy, basically the workflow goes, have you been paused? So I'll show you that stuff in a second. Hey. Okay, so this is an idea of a payment plan. The system will then, using the standard eventing, start to monitor all of these different payments. And there's some configuration there. That stuff's just about finished. It's probably about 2 weeks away. So I'll maybe leave that for now. Yeah, touching on some other things in terms of bits and pieces that I've probably forgotten to show you. So yeah, you can set it to a pause phase. That will, often it's for breathing space, or maybe the defendants ask for more details. You specify a pause reason, breathing space, and that will then pause all of the workflows. And how that's achieved, just in the workflow, there's a step which is going wait for that stuff. Yeah. I think that's just probably worth showing. I presume most people are sort of reasonably okay with that. But using some of the new sort of key facts widgets, you can then start to make this a bit more graphical within the key facts widget. So there's a setting there to say, actually, there's pause, breathing space. Yeah. Okay. Have I covered everything? Let me flick back to this. I'll just use this as a brief review. I've shown you a little bit of pre-action type stuff. I haven't gone through the whole point in terms of English law. I haven't covered enforcements. So yeah, we do some work on the enforcement life cycle. So certainly within our configuration, they're just schedule types and no magic there. Again, have I got enforcements here? I need to be in the enforcements phase, I guess. Okay, let me go and create enforcement. Okay, so we've set up essentially a subtype called court order, of which a subtype of court order is enforcement within this. So maybe I want to do a charging order. I kick off a charging order. And again, workflows fire in the back of this. They'll create prep docs and all of that good stuff. So it's almost like I've got my top level matter and I've got a sub container to manage my various enforcements. And I think we've done sort of basic workflows, although I'm not 100% clear on, I guess, 6 or 7 of these. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of enforcements, a bit about debt tranches, just a type of invoice. Since we're all, well, most of us, I think, are sort of ShareDo configurators, I'll maybe just give you a view of that behind the scenes, and we'll certainly have a look at that in the finance section, which we're going to move sort of fairly swiftly over to that. So let's go to our modeler. And I've created debt as a subtype of invoice. Equally, there's fees and settlement invoices as well. Yep. Okay, we covered payment plans briefly. Still a bit more work to do on that. Payments and purchase orders we looked at very, very briefly. Hey, we looked a little bit with the investigation workflow, a little bit of the pre-action. We didn't even get onto service. I think I've got a recording which I'll send after this, which covers all of those bits and pieces. But taking it through its life cycle is more than we can do in 20 odd minutes. Hey, Sam covered off this sort of stuff. We've still got a little bit of work to do there, which is in release 8 around taking payments, income and expenditure forms for consumers, and the sort of newer PAP type stuff, which is getting done there. And we haven't really covered much of the MI, but I'm running out of time. Hey, so hopefully that's a quick intro into debt. Unfortunately, I think it's like the world of COVID has given rise to 3 work types that we're seeing a lot of: ClinNeg, MedNeg, debt, and unfortunately divorce. Hey, now. So hopefully, if you're doing more work in this area, this will provide an accelerator to you. Any questions? You got me again in a second, so please ask a question to give me a break.
Nothing on the chat now, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Am I doing all right for time, Teresa? How much have I got?
Yeah. No, you're perfect. We haven't got Dave yet. He should be arriving in the next few minutes.
All right, no stress. I can go on about finance for a while. Finance. We've been working on this for about 1.5 years, I think. And broadly, the way I look at it is we're trying to do proper case accounting. What does proper case accounting mean? It means that when you're capturing your financial transactions, we record that against a configurable chart of accounts. So I can clearly see from an MI perspective where my costs lie, where my awards or my reserves lie, where my client funds lie. And broadly, we're trying to put more and more sophisticated functionality into ShareDo, because ultimately it's a lot easier for your fee earners if they can just interact in one place and then back that stuff off to your PMS or your ERP. Okay? So some key concepts here. The chart of accounts. So previously we had the concept of reserves, and we start to use that for lots of different purposes. That's now configurable, and has the concept of segments. So you can add additional segments. What do segments mean? Well, you'll typically report your chart of accounts against a bunch of cost codes, for example. But let's say your client wants to report on a different set of codes. You can add those as well. Or as often happens in English law, and indeed other jurisdictions, your court wants you to report your costs against another set of codes. You can configure all those codes in the chart of accounts. The case ledger, every time you do a transaction, it records these financial transactions in a proper ledger. Budgets, which were called reserves or awards, are now completely configurable and are starting to be used for lots more purposes. So that's the core of it. We've then put all of that embedded all of that functionality in all the different finance types. and indeed added a few more finance types to round off this. So if I just go through those, account adjustments are designed for two purposes really. If you want to do client accounting, you can transfer between Office and client accounts. You can use them as an external interface, so a work type that you use. So, for example, if you want to pump in financial transactions through your PMS, and I know Sarah's on the call, so that's something that you guys will be doing. Hey, so that's account adjustments. It's there to adjust the accounts. Payments, broadly the same as we had before, but just enhanced slightly. Same for invoices. We've made some fundamental changes to invoice payments, so that you can take a payment more easily and then attribute it across different invoices. Likewise, we've added the concept of payment plans. So if you've got a payment plan and you take a payment, you would attribute that across a bunch of invoices automatically, potentially. Offices, time, fees, all becoming aware of the case ledger. There are a few supporting pieces to this, which some people use, some people don't. Multi-currency stuff, it's not, you can set up different statements of work to have different currencies. We're never going to do currency conversion. That's definitely for your finance system to do, but you can we can run ShareDo in a multi-currency mode and take different transactions. Goods and services as lookups for payments, etc., and then units of measure to drive some of that goods and services functionality. That's my overview of functionality. Just going to have a look at what that looks like in the system. Okay. So, within the feature framework, you see a bunch of new features. By the way, this is very much an abridged. I think I did a 2-hour training session on finance a couple of weeks ago, which I imagine is available on a recording somewhere if you want to look at this stuff. So we're going to look at a couple of these. We're going to start by looking at the chart of accounts. So actually, I'll tell you what we're going to start. So we're going to look at your finance V2 migration. So what should happen is you upgrade to whatever version of ShareDo. I think this is available from like 6.53, and you will get a button to press. What will that button do? It will run through your existing reserve configuration, which was very hard for you guys to change. Hey, so there may be some duplicates there. It will sort out some duplicates. It will migrate all of your finance types to the new model. It will set up all your new accounting structure, and I'll come back to that in a second. It will sort your settlement outcome options, which have been changed fundamentally. So I'll walk you through that. Set up your budgets, and then migrate all of your transactions to the new model. There obviously is some danger with this stuff, so it has to be done in a test environment. It has gone through a lot of testing this actually, but the way we've done it is we've kept all the existing data structures there. So God forbid there's a discrepancy, we can very quickly address that. Hey, so that's your upgrade. It comes with a little bit of configuration cost, and I'll walk you through that. Okay, the first piece is your chart of accounts. Hey, so everyone, since it's based on the reserve system, will inherit types, categories, and account codes. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff should be familiar. Let's go and have a look at the values. Yeah, you'll have things like schedule of loss, schedule of claim, costs and disbursements. And then we've started playing around with things like client accounts for some of the bank account management type stuff. Yeah. But that will come automatically. It will bring across all your disbursement categories, and so things like damages, special, general, all of that sort of stuff, costs and dibs. it will have a go, and these codes get used throughout the application now. It will have a go at creating these codes. I mean, machine's not that clever, hey, so it doesn't create beautiful codes in your migration, but you're free to change this stuff, yeah? Okay, and then it will bring across all your various account codes as they see fit, and you can filter and sort that stuff. But that's fully configurable. You can disable codes, add new codes, all of that good stuff, yeah? You can, if you want to, create additional segments. So there's a bunch of settings on segments, such as what's its name, is it an independent segment or hierarchical? Are you allowed? Does it get locked down when you post these transactions? So I don't think people would do that very often. I mean, we're using that stuff for J codes in the UK. I think. I mean, sort of in-house firms such as Liberty or Virgin will probably use that for internal cost centers, I suspect. But yeah, so there's a few use cases. You're going to do this once and then forget about it, I suspect. Okay, that is your chart of accounts. Now, let's just spend a couple more seconds on this. There's going to be a lot of them, right? I don't know how many we've got in this config, but a fair number, it has to be said. So you're going to want to lock that down. Yeah. So when I'm in, let's go back to one of these matters I was in. So if I'm in, what have I got here? Let's go to a different matter. Let's go to a ULR. So if I'm doing a transaction in my ULR matter, let's say I'm recording disbursement, yeah? What I don't want to do is show them every single code known to mankind, yeah? Because users are just going to get it wrong. Indeed, if I can get away without showing them all of these account codes, then I'm doing a very good job. So what you do is go into your sub features, go into your work type configuration, go to your specific type, payment request disbursements, and I basically say, what codes would I like to use? So I can say, right, do I want to use all the segments? This will be off by default, but let's say you added in the equivalent of cost accounting for courts, so J code present at H type stuff. You plainly probably don't want to put this on your real estate transactions, so you can turn that stuff off, yeah. And then you specify what account codes you want to show to users. So in here, I've said I want them to pick from assessment or costs, from my disbursements own, and then I've got a wild card, so they can choose any account there. But if I said actually it's only application fee, then they'll be given no choice whatsoever. So that's all around refining the account codes that are available to a specific type of financial transaction. Yeah. You can also, if you want to add matching rules, but that's a lot more complicated. And certainly when I've been doing this this finance config, I haven't had to do that whatsoever. Okay, so I think I've covered. Oh, there's one more piece here. So let's go back to my disbursements. So the next concept here is, so I've said that this transaction type, payments, is going to use these account codes. The final piece I need to do is basically configure against its life cycle what the status of these transactions, and I'll walk you through that in a second. So I can say whether they're WIP, whether they're posted, or whether they're reversed. Let's look at it from a matter perspective. So here's my matter. It's got a bunch of different payment requests, a bunch of different invoices. These are at different statuses within their phase plan. And from a transaction log perspective, I can then see the audit of all of those things. And I've got this concept of transaction state. What does that mean? It means if you create a payment, you can configure a payment to recognize transactions at a particular point in its phase plan. So you might have an approval step. You might only want to recognize the payment after it's gone for approval. You configure that payment to have that stuff as posted. It's also used for integrating with external finance systems. So your adherents, your elites, and your zeros, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay, that's that concept. We'll pause for breath. I can be less verbose now because Dave's here. Happy days, Dave. I was going to go on forever. Hey,
Are you filling? You filling?
yeah, I know I'm not filling. I've still got more. I'm a chatter. Hey, right, okay. That's chart of accounts. I'll speed up a little bit more. Let's go back to my feature framework. So the big fundamental change, I think, that's basically lots more configurabilities around budgets. So let's look at this stuff. So you run the migration, it creates your budgets. Again, you probably want to change names and stuff like that. So it will create a cost and dibs for dispute claimant, schedule of claim, awards, etc. For all of these guys. What does a budget look like? Let's have a look at that stuff. So it has a bunch of account settings. So which of those segments, and it most of the time will be account code, do I want to budget against? How do I want to manage my change reasons? So if I change a budget line, then when do I want to capture a reason? Permissions, and then introduces the concept of a phase model. And I'll demonstrate that from the front end, hey, and we'll come back to that in a second, yeah. You then say, I would like to budget on all these different accounts. So you pick the accounts you want to add these budgets to. And finally, you configure the display settings, so the columns on a budget. That's a little bit of the config model. Let's look at it, what it looks like from a front end. Okay, so what have I done here? I've configured a couple of pages on this matter type, and there are a load of new widgets to help you do this stuff, yeah. So let's look at the core widget, this budget widget. What have we got here? So it's scheduled claim, budget. We saw that very briefly. It's got a bunch of columns. Those columns are now configurable. You do what you want to do there. And it's showing my various heads of losses there. It's also showing me this history here as well. So it's gone through quite a few changes, this, eh? So this is the idea of a phase model. Previously in reserves, we had the concepts of settled, and you actually had two screens, one for non-settled, one for settled. Yeah, that's all been replaced by the idea of a phase plan. Yeah, so let's open up this budget. Okay, so exactly the same way as the other schedule types, you'll see the idea of the phase plan at the top. Yeah. Now you can define these phases out of the box. We just mimicked what we had before, but we've added things like initial and final. So in a lot of people's reserves config or awards config, hey, they had things like a column called initial, and they often had best case, worst case, those sort of things. Yeah, you can now configure those as phases. Yeah. Now, when you progress to a phase, let me change the value. I'll make this 56 grand. It's asking me for a reason code. And I'll mark that as on a final position. Okay. Let's see, let's close that. Every time you make a phase change, it keeps a snapshot of your budget. So you don't need a column for initial, you don't need a column for final. It will keep an audit of all of that stuff as you go through it, and you can do some MI or some side-by-side comparison. Let's go back to an older one here. And I can see this one was at 23 grand in this point. So it keeps a complete audit of those. So you can either manage that by the phase model, so initial, final, draft, whatever it is, settle positive, settle negative, or you can optionally turn on the idea of snapshot. So I can give it a specific name. So it gives you a lot more control over your budgets, both from costs, reserves, awards, and associated with that, there are a bunch of more visualizations. So I'll spend, Dave, are you all right if I go on for about 5 more minutes? Is that okay? Happy days. All right, I'll just do 5 minutes on the widgets, yeah? So what have we, let's go, this is how I've configured it. You can configure it as you wish, yeah? Finance dashboard. there's a new essentially financial summary widget that you can compare budgets with actuals. There's a lot of configuration options on that to produce some of these visualizations. This is actually an example of another IDE widget, so same stuff as Sam was showing you, which is designed to visualize stuff from API calls to your backend PMS. Everything's list view, so I've got a list of payment requests, list of invoices. They're all list view providers for all this sort of stuff. Receipts, transaction logs are all list view providers. There's if I go into budgets awards, there's some more visualization widgets for budgets to show things like movements. There's obviously the budget piece itself, which you can configure either as a blade or as a portal, and likewise we have the same sort of transaction log, which again, all of these are just list view with specific list view providers that you can configure and you know, add various columns and do all of that sort of stuff. That's a very quick intro. There's a lot of finance functionality here. I think there's a lot of benefit to be gained for everyone from this stuff. What I've said to Teresa and her team is that I'm more than happy to spend time with everyone getting this configured correctly, because I think we're not quite an ERP system, but for those of us who have gone through the implementation of an ERP system, it's not something you do in 2 minutes. It requires a bit of planning and a little bit of thinking. So I'm happy to assist people with that process to make sure that you're doing this stuff right. Hey, but yeah, you shouldn't think it's just a sort of, it's done in a second, even though the config's easy. It requires some upfront planning around your accounts and your costs and your budgets and all that stuff. I'm now hoarse. Me done.
Well done, Ben. That was talking for a long time. I have put in the chat the YouTube link to the training course that Ben did. I'm going to say end of last month, Ben. So that's a full 2 hour. It's a full-on training course, that one. We will be running it again. I've not got a date on that one yet, but we will be running that again. And as Ben said, if anybody is interested in setting up any of this stuff that you've seen, then drop me a note and I'll loop Ben in and we'll look at versions and what you've got and where we need to go with it. Okay, all right, fab. Dave, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
So over to you.
Yeah, lovely. That's great. Look, thanks for inviting me onto the forum today. I'm hoping that I can share a slide with you, just one. But I see that the share button's been disabled, so only meeting organisers and presenters can share. That's music to my ears. Those of you that don't know me should know that I'm not a big fan of presentations. We probably all sit through too many of them, so very happy just to chat with you. Or Teresa, I can send you the slide and you can stick it on in the background if that's okay with you.
Yep, no worries. If you want to do that, I'll pop that.
Let me do that. Yeah, okay.
Oh, that's a fail. It's a technical fail on my part, isn't it?
No, don't worry. It was completed at probably 11 p.m. last night, so I don't think. Yeah.
No, Dave, don't give that away. We've been playing this a long time, Dave. We were really organised. We were ready.
You are definitely organised. I am now ready.
Right,
all right. Yeah, you got that. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, look, whilst you're bringing that up, so hello everybody, and sorry I was late to the call. I think just a quick introduction from me. So my name's Dave. I work in the shared service centre of Liberty Global. For those of you that don't know, Liberty Global is a global telecommunications company who has lots of different subsidiary companies operating across Europe dominantly. The brand in the UK that majority of you will be familiar with is Virgin Media, now Virgin Media O2, following a joint venture that concluded last year. We've also got operations in the Republic of Ireland, Belgium, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Slovakia. We've got some in North America too, and in various smaller businesses. And the reason I kind of give you that context is because our shared service centre, which is where our legal operations team is based, use ShareDo for matter management. So I'm sure, you know, very similar use case to the majority of you on this call. But we have a number of clients, if you like, that are internal customers. And we receive instructions from our internal customers in a similar way to the way in which an external party might send an instruction through as well. So they're coming from lots of different operating companies. And so I thought that context was useful. So here's my slide, which is wonderful. The slide's not wonderful. The fact that it's there is wonderful. So what I wanted to cover in this kind of 10-15 minute discussion is the top 3 things. I want to talk to you a little bit about our experience of APIs and robotics. We use some robotic process automation to integrate into other systems and tie them together with ShareDo to enable our legal operations team to spend more time working on the ShareDo platform and less time flicking between systems. We've got a lot of value from that, so I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about our current build, so big ShareDo logo in the middle. You know, what we're using ShareDo for now, you know, some of the integrations that ShareDo have helped us with, and we've found some value through. And then a bit of a look forward to the future and tell you some of the things we're looking at doing, and you know, some of the reasons that I think the ShareDo platform has really helped us to move on, I guess, in that space. And then some learnings, some good and some bad learnings from our experience of the deployment. You know, if we were to go back, just some of the things that we might do differently next time, or some of the things that we'll do differently in future deployments. So I want to start off on the left-hand side with this instruction column, because I view our ShareDo deployment as you know, a combination of kind of three different things. The way that we receive instructions from, you know, various parties across the business, the actual, you know, use of ShareDo as a matter management platform in the middle, and then over the right hand side, what we do when the legal operations team finish and those transactions need to be processed in an ERP. So we use Oracle as our ERP, so transactional processing of payments, if you like. So over on the left-hand side, receiving instructions. So a couple of things to say. First one is this engineers portal, so bottom left here. So ShareDo have helped us to set up a user interface whereby members of our operating companies are able to interface directly into ShareDo, input information, which then forms an instruction, which is then, after, you know, bouncing around various different places to collect information, then deposited neatly into a work queue for one of our lawyers to be able to, you know, screen and set up a file, evaluate the prospects on a file, and then get going with an instruction. And the reason I think this portal is worth a couple of minutes is because it's complicated, and because it provides us with a huge amount of process automation, system-driven process automation. Let me very quickly explain this process. We talk about an engineering portal. The majority of businesses that we serve are construction businesses, so using field-appointed contract partners to actually break open the footpath and the road and install subterranean apparatus, so cables, ducting, chambers, and then cabinets to connect a subsurface fibre optic network. And with 100,000 kilometres of fibre optic network in the ground in the UK, when other utilities providers or other, you know, subterranean constructions happen, our network and lots of other utilities and communication providers' network it is damaged from time to time. And when that network is damaged, a network operations team sitting outside of the legal operations team, as you'd expect, dispatches an engineer to go and investigate why there has been an interruption or a loss of service. The network's alarmed, so we get an alert. The engineer turns up to site, and the engineer works out that there is somebody else digging in the hole, and that person in all likelihood has damaged the network. The engineer is able to use this user interface, this two-way portal, to be able to collect some information at the scene of the incident, the time it's happening, so going real time, recording the location they're at by pin dropping, recording, you know, what's happened, you know, what sort of damage has happened. And when they complete their initial instruction and they press, finished, if you like, that instruction doesn't come into the legal operations team. That instruction then goes on and instructs a partner, so a contract partner, construction partner, to come out and effect the repair, and allows that partner then to submit their invoice for the works done. And that invoice is then validated back with the engineering team, so all in the field at this point. And then once that validation's happened, the correct amount of work has been done, the correct materials and tools were used to complete that repair, only at that point does that instruction then gets fed directly into the legal operations team and the ShareDo platform proper. And so using that kind of front-end user interface means that our engineers are able to collect information live, send that information in the moment. We're collecting information on both the details of the loss, but also the value of the recovery to be made. And it is only at that point that our legal ops team are then engaged to evaluate, validate that claim, and then pursue it if there's any prospects. So we've managed to really reduce what was previously a really administrative process, with the legal ops team having to interface with engineers, with contract partners, a lot of backwards and forwards work on the telephone, a lot of email exchanges, and inevitably a lot of information lost. So I find that to be a really valuable part of the build. I'll quickly touch on, again, conscious of time and everything else, but we could touch on how we're using robotics as well to interface into some third-party systems. I'm not sure if there's anybody on the call that deals with any type of consumer disputes, of any kind, but naturally working in the communications industry, we're regulated by Ofcom, and Ofcom mandate that you have a fair and transparent customer complaints process, which is managed in call centres throughout, the UK. And if a complaint isn't resolved directly with the customer to the customer's satisfaction, the customer, after a period of time, needs to be signposted, Ofcom tells us, to an independent adjudication service. There are a couple of them in the UK. There's CEDA, Centre for Effective Dispute Resolution, and Ombudsman Services. And the communications provider needs to work with the Centre for Effective Dispute Resolution or Ombudsman Services to receive details of any escalations by consumers and respond to them using the CEDA's or the Ombudsman Services matter management tool, which in the case of CEDA, which is the company that we currently work with, is a platform called Modria. Modria is kind of a two-way dispute resolution tool. So, the consumer enters some information their side, the communication provider enters some information their side, and then, if there's not a resolution, that goes off to to our arbitration, if you like. Now, probably telling you things that the majority of you in the call already know, so I'll tell you a little bit about why that's labour intensive. Before we had brought this robot on board, we had colleagues, we had paralegals who were logging into the CEDA platform every day. We're extracting information from the CEDA platform on kind of new matters, and then we're keying that in as a new instruction into ShareDo manually. So they were effectively duplicating information. And the reason they were doing that was so that we had a record on our matter management platform. We could manage workload and capacity. We could carry out audits, which we couldn't do on a third-party system. And so this double keying's, duplicative effort. We have managed to configure a robot, and actually, and ShareDo have allowed us to access their APIs to allow us to extract the information, once a day from the CEDA platform, and take that information into ShareDo. And actually, we use the robot now. The robot's got a user license, got a ShareDo license to enter information in and set up a new matter on the user's behalf. So it completely replicates the information that's on the CEDA platform, keys it in and assigns it out to a user. The user can carry out their work on ShareDo, and then it works the other way as well. So the robot extracts that information and updates the CEDA platform, which means that we're only interfacing with one tool. We don't need to go across two different systems. We don't have to duplicate information, which is really, really helpful. As an aside, the robot now also does a little bit of research for us, so it can interrogate our own customer-facing systems, so customer services platforms, extract evidential information, and then copy that into a neat text file on the ShareDo platform. So it provides all the information to the paralegal to be able to investigate and make a very quick response to that adjudication. As most of you will know, there are it's very one-sided. There are no legal fees that can be recovered if you successfully repudiate an adjudicated claim through the Ombudsman Service or CEDA platforms. And so it really is a case of trying to operate at the lowest possible cost, but still get the right resolution, both for the consumer and for the business. So robots really helping us, and the APIs and ShareDo being very helpful there as well. We also use robots for some internal instructions. So that's the kind of the API robotics piece. At the other end, we also, when a matter is concluded, if a payment's to be made or a payment is received, we use robots to access our ERP, to review the ERP and look for things like matter reference numbers. So ShareDo matter reference numbers, if they're properly quoted, which is a learning in itself for the business and for the other side that we're working with. Assuming they are, when they go into Oracle, they can be coded properly, and the robot can just pick them up, can update ShareDo, can actually archive the file if there's no outstanding tasks as well. So we're getting a lot of value using RPA and ShareDo hand in hand together. And actually the ShareDo team have been incredibly responsive. Appreciate that this is definitely not just me blowing a bit of smoke for you, Ben, but it's always nice to tell you when a job's well done. I think we're both learning from each other. I think we've both been learning from each other over the last kind of 18 months, 2 years that these robots have been in and working. On day one, I think we thought it was an excellent idea to build these robots into the user interface, so almost to replace the job of a human. So they kind of, the robot's literally clicking fields on ShareDo like a human would. We soon learned that naturally every time, software as a service ShareDo, every time the ShareDo platform's updated, it's going to throw the robot off because suddenly the robot's looking in a slightly different place and it gets confused, and that, that's pretty difficult. But actually using the ShareDo APIs, which are now voluminous, it makes a really stable integration. So certainly good learning from us. Couple more, if that's okay. I'm kind of looking to Ben and Teresa to say, yeah, we're okay still for time.
Keep going.
If it's all right, Dave, I'll just add to that, because I think the whole robot story with you guys is really good, hey. But yeah, just to emphasize the learnings from that was, from my side, because like lawyers are constantly saying we need the UI to be better. So we're changing the UI, it was breaking robots, wasn't it? So definitely for people who want to use robots, try and use the APIs, because that stuff's more solid. And I guess the other thing that always made me laugh about your stuff is, to start with, our SaaS alerting system was basically registering your robots as a distributed denial of service attack, because although they're one user, my God, they're pretty efficient, aren't they? Because they're churning through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of instructions. So I think we've solved that problem for any other customer now, that ShareDo doesn't say I'm under attack when someone's absolutely battering it. But yeah, it was good. It's really good stuff. Sorry, back to you.
No, thanks, Ben. That's really helpful, and I'm sure most people on this call are exploring, or have already used RPA robots. But if you're not, we found an awful lot of value in terms of reducing administration and also allowing the lawyers to spend more time in ShareDo, and that means naturally we can manage their workloads more effectively. As from a leadership perspective, we can see where people are spending their time. And actually, it's kind of a self-fulfilling situation as well, because the more time that the team is spending in ShareDo, the more we can see what's causing them pain, and the more we can work with the ShareDo team and the robotics team to deploy further enhancements to the platform to get them a better user experience. So I think it works out well for everyone. Moving into the middle section, if that's okay, and actually the second topic, which is our build, what we're using it for, and what we've got planned for the future. As an in-house function and operating from a shared service center, we've got a couple of things. One, we deal with whatever comes through the door, and so the work we deal with is generally very varied. We've got the usual stuff that you would expect. So we've got lines of insurance claims, so claims brought against the company for all sorts of things, ranging from consumer disputes to insurance claims. That's employers' public liability. That's also motor liability. That's increasingly things like data breach claims. And Sharedo is configured to deal with all of those. On the recovery side, so we talked a little bit about the engineers portal and recording damages. We have a lot of expensive physical apparatus, and that is damaged on a regular basis. And so there is a damage recovery function. There is a commercial debt recovery function as well for business to business transactions. We deal with a little bit of non-contentious work, so some real estate, some rights of access work as well. So way leads for anybody that's in the in the industry. And so lots of different work types we're putting into the Sharedo platform, and what we've found very useful is Sharedo. Ben, I think you know, but I think you've still got this kind of smaller business mentality, and I mean this in the right way, in that you are very open to the needs of us and to your customers, and very responsive to those needs. When we first started doing business with you, we needed an integration into the claims portal to be able to deal with insurance claims, and as part of the build we've got the integration. And so rather than going into the Rapid Claims portal separately, we can stay in Sharedo, and you've got the interface so you can update the portal for us. We're now asking you for integrations to things like HM Land Registry to mean that we don't need to exit the system again, and you've got those integrations as part of your your kind of core offering, and we find an awful lot of value in that. I think in the future, as we start to look towards the future of kind of legal tech more fully, we're exploring, like the majority of people on this call, how we can automate some of our legal research. There's platforms, as I'm sure most of you are aware, in the States that are doing some of this legal research. There's some challenges, partly to some of our legal research database providers in kind of opening up and allowing these searches to happen. Other things, contract markup technology, different types of kind of negotiation calculators, and having had numerous discussions with the Sharedo development teams, we know how open the platform is to working with third-party vendors who are offering some of this really quite advanced and cool legal tech, and it almost doesn't make sense trying to bastardize or over configure Sharedo to try and do some of this stuff for us when that's not its core product offering, but absolutely makes sense for us to pick a market leader from the US or from Germany or wherever else it is doing kind of contract markup automation and say, well, can we integrate that into the Sharedo platform? So the team are using the consistent workbench, if you like, but if a contract needs to be reviewed, it can just be picked up by the third-party integration and can come back into the Sharedo platform done. We're finding a lot of positive experiences from exploring this future state with the Sharedo team, and certainly the next 18 months for us contains a number of those integrations, which we're very excited to do. And then just to finish, if that's okay, on some of the learnings that we've taken from the build so far, and I know that Kyle, who's on the call, who's helped with an awful lot of the configuration and continues to do so for Liberty Global's implementation of Sharedo, will hopefully attest to some of this stuff, but we'll probably have some of the things that I'll miss. Some of the greatest learnings for me, Ben's already touched on one: user interface versus API. I mean, we didn't know that at the time. We were all exploring robotics for the first time, certainly in Liberty Global, which was 2 years ago. And if we were doing it again, the APIs are good. Use the APIs where you can. We adopted very liberally the 80% rule. So our business, like most, is moving very fast. And so no sooner had we implemented the Sharedo build to a point, as in the lights were turned on and there was something to enter information into, we got all of the users trained on the Sharedo platform. We got everybody migrated over. Everybody was running in the Sharedo space, and we were off building some robot integration into something else. We kind of moved on, if you like. When the system was 70-80% built, configured, ready, and lots of pressures for wanting to do that, not wanting to dual run our previous system on, so wanting to actually have a very reduced cutover period to try and save some costs, a want and a need to operate as a shared service platform, to take on new work from different entities, the demands of that work coming from different sides, and bringing others on board onto their shared experience as well. But having had the time again, that impacted the user experience, that impacted the lawyers and the paralegals who we've got using these platforms, because come onto the ShareDo platform, we've seen conceptually, we've seen what it can do, we've configured the documents to say what we're going to pay for and what it is going to do, and we've delivered 80% of the working parts, and the 20% is the shiny stuff. And actually it's the 20% in my experience that the lawyers and the paralegals notice when it's not there. And so we've built that up over kind of the last kind of 6, 12, probably 18 months now, and gone back and tinkered with and tweaked and enhanced and made better. And I think now we've delivered 100% of what we'd intended to deliver on day one, and actually probably applied that 80% rule a little bit liberally. I think if I went back and did it again, I'd probably spend a little bit more time in the operation. And this is me dedicating different resource onto this project to finish off some of this stuff a bit more quickly, to enhance the paralegals and the lawyers' user experience, because otherwise we find ourselves chasing our tails a bit in terms of communication, and got a little bit of negative sentiment from some of the users saying, oh, I haven't got the functionality I need, or I have to kind of work around the system rather than working with it. And so there's a little bit of disconnect between the actual user and the management team. So really key lesson for me. And then the third one, and the third one's a positive one. I definitely wanted to end on a really positive one. It is, I have learned the value of working with Ben and team, and I call Ben out here because Ben, you've been involved in our build for a long time now, and just this interest in the big picture. I'm a big picture thinker. I'm thinking about the next kind of 5 to 7 years of services that we provide, and what the landscape's going to look like, what's going to be required in respect of cost per transaction, what's going to be required in respect of the service provision and the availability of providing that service using automations or enhanced automations. And Ben has sometimes taken scrawled pictures that I've written in a notebook, taken a photograph of, and forwarded to him on email and said, can you build this? And at no point has he said no. There's been some conversations where we've said, I've no idea what this is, but actually what we've taken from that relationship and that kind of interest in the big picture and the willingness to constantly innovate and to do things differently, we've now got a conceptual mobile platform which is going to enhance the experience that our front-end users get from the ShareDo platform. So those engineers who turn up to site and today log into their laptop and send an instruction, that's kind of efficient, but they've still got to log into their laptop. Being able to do that from a mobile device, being able to receive instructions from their mobile device, being able to communicate on a two-way messaging platform to the ShareDo team, to the legal team who are working on the ShareDo in the shared service center, all of that is happening because of the needs that we have in our business and the way that we generate ideas, but also the willingness and the interest and the appetite of the ShareDo team to want to get involved in that and to want to help us solve our problems. And so the third and final learning is if there is a need, a want, or a problem, regardless of whether we think it exists as a solution in the ShareDo platform today, my learning, my advice, if you like, is to get in touch with the team and to play it out, because everything that we have come up with so far, Ben and the team have said, sometimes it's been, we're not quite there yet, but it's always been we can do something, we can help here, or have you thought about doing it this way? And actually it's very much felt like a partnership right through. So hopefully that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, some really kind words, Dave. Hey, and thank you very much. I've got one question which I see across all of our clients. Hey, and I'm aware that you had some issues there. Like in your initial build, your sort of idealized processes versus where you are today, right? And it's a slightly leading question, I suppose. How much did you throw away? Because I know with some of the consumer workflows, we just junked a load of those, because what I see across our client base is almost we try and do too much up front, and a lot of it's waste because almost users need to use. And it'd be interesting if you can share your experience with getting workflows right through that journey, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. No, thanks for the question. We have a tendency, I wonder if this is shared by others on the call, we had a tendency to overbuild. Part of that was because when you naturally bringing on a new matter management platform is a huge step for the majority of law firms and legal operations, and so there's an awful lot of planning that goes into it. There's a lot of time in motion exercises. There's a lot of process mapping, and I think when we first set out on this journey, conceptually, in terms of what we wanted from the platform, we had a list of the kind of 10 or 12 requirements. Absolutely must be able to display a really comprehensive and an interactive history. So, if we've got a claim or a matter open for 2, 3, 4 years, we can go back and see the history. Got to be able to audit that. We wanted timestamps and things like that, time recording, email and letter writing functionality, all of the basics, right? And there's a handful more. But actually, that list, we should have built to that list. And actually, where we over-engineered it, to some extent we had to, but where we over-engineered it was where we started to go down into the task-based, descriptions. What do you mean? When you're building out an ELPL process, when you're building out a consumer process, what do you want? And we said, well, actually, we want to try and write down every single thing that we expect a user to do, and we kind of built workflow for that. And what that meant was that it put our teams into this kind of very structured, over-structured process where if anything deviated from that process, you then needed to design an escalation or a deviation route, and it just became hugely complicated. And Spen says, we got to the point where we said, actually, let's throw away a load of the workflow because it's not needed, because that's training. That's training somebody how to handle one of these matters, or that's, something that you get with experience, or the lawyers will know how to do that. And actually using ShareDo as ShareDo should be an aid, if you like, and not necessarily too rigid a workflow regard.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that we see, that, as Ben said, that is something we see a lot during the implementation phase, is people will almost try to make it a script for people to do their job. So on the one hand, you've got lawyers who say, I know how to do my job, and you've actually created me more work. And then, of course, you have the other people that become so 100% reliant on it that they, as you say, it almost nullifies that training element. So, yeah, absolutely. I think that's something we see quite a lot of. Thank you so much, Dave. That was brilliant. And I think probably just one shout out back to the Liberty Global team is I think my experience, with a lot of clients over the years, and you are a hugely brave client in terms of, you do tend to go bleeding edge, and you work with us to get those things that you want from the system rolled out. So, to Kim and Kyle and yourself and the team, it's really, really good to work with.
It's very kind. Thank you.
Okay, so just if we're okay, if anybody's got any questions for Dave, I think there was one, Dave, that just went into the back there, but Kyle and Ben answered it for you. I'm just going to steal 5 minutes for myself. I think you're still looking at my screen. Is that right? Can everybody see diary dates?
Yeah.
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay. All right. So we've got some training courses coming up. As you all know, we have been trying to run regular training courses, 100% free. We're trying to get as many people onto them as possible, because obviously the more you know about the system, the more use you'll get out of it. So the next few that we've got coming up, we've got process modeling with Phil early April, and that will be looking at modeling your business processes and then converting that into the system and how to configure that type of stuff. Then we've got an open document templating session in May. Now, lots and lots of you have had different training courses for documents, but this is going to be an end-to-end, and it will encompass all things like the Word plugin, which I think we did a dedicated session on a few months back. We've got the advanced configurator session. So we do have the basic configurator session available on YouTube, which I did send out. If anybody wants it, feel free to drop me a line and I will send you the links for those again. But we're going to look at some more advanced stuff, but there'll be much shorter sessions, probably half an hour a day for 4 or 5 days. And then finally in July we'll be looking at UI modelling, and that's something that is brand new from a training perspective, and it's just really showing you the way that you can change your UI using the application, especially around theming and things like that, which once upon a time we would have programmed in. So they're the training courses that we've got coming up. As Ben mentioned, we do have an application update call that we're going to pop in about 3 months' time. We've not nailed down the date on that yet, but that will be Ben again just taking you through some of the newer features that we've got within the application. And then our next main user forum will be in September. So if anybody wants any information on any of those, give me a shout. As usual, I will send out the recording for this forum afterwards with some links for all of those training courses to get them in your diaries. But if anybody wants a bit more information about what will be covered, then just give me a shout.
Just a teaser. I'm sincerely hoping by the June, so we're going to have like user forums every 6 months, application updates in the middle. I'm sincerely hoping we'd have finished the visual workflow designer by then, because let's be honest, writing smart plans, it's not fun. Yeah, I'll definitely be showing some of that in June, if not the completed piece of work by June. Hey, fingers crossed.
Thank you. Okay, all right, fine. So I mean, that's really just our thank you slide. Thank you everyone so much for coming. I hope you all got a lot out of it, especially obviously thanks to Dave for your wonderful presentation. Again, apologies that I didn't have you as a presenter. But if anybody wants any more information, as always, just you can either drop me a message, you can contact anyone of the team that you have there. I think we've got a comment in the background. Can we believe what Phil tells us on it? Oh, I see, Peter, very good. Maybe, yeah, okay, a training course on the 1st of April might not be the best day to have it, but let's do it after midday. But if anybody has any more questions, just give me a shout and we can pick it up from there. Thank you very much, everybody. I will give you 11 minutes of your day back. Thank you. Take care.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.